Hey, we're starting webinar Windev Live, webinar number 10, Wednesday, February 8th, 2012. So it is time for Andy show. Go
Good
for it,
morning,
Andy.
everybody. I know it's such a late in the morning because Arnold has a hard time getting up early, but I want to thank everybody for being here. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about either how easy it is, difficult, or the differences. We've all had to deal with the possibility of using COM objects, .NET DLLs, things like this, looking at getting those into a Clarion application, and Capesoft has been wonderful about providing some of the tools to be able to do that with, and I'm going to show you here how that works in a Windev environment using the direct .NET DLLs from Microsoft SQL. Okay, because Microsoft SQL has a bunch of .NET calls and stuff that we can use. In our program that we ship out to all our clients, we have an ability for them to change servers. Basically, we click this, and what happens is we get a server name from the network based upon Capesoft sending us a queue of these from a program that resides on the server and lets us know, they broadcast us out the server name is what happens. So in order to translate this over to Windev, we actually have to emulate this same thing. Since Capesoft doesn't do Windev add-ons, we have to look at rebuilding it on our own and figuring out how that works. There are two types of .NET DLLs that comes with the installation of MS SQL. One of them is, and that's always there, is SMO, with System Management Objects. And then you have the SmoApplications, which allows you to bring in all of the available servers. You can import directly into Windev any .NET assembly you wish. We'll go through that step in a minute. The problem is trying to figure out exactly how you should write it to get that information. Okay. Luckily, either you have some C# skills that you may already have, or there is a plethora of C# examples out there to do a bunch of different things. One of them is to get the servers. Basically go through the network and get all of the server names that are out there that they can access. And that is what you're seeing here, is the actual C# code that does that. And I'll go through this. We're going to instantiate the enum available servers. That says go get me all of the servers. The false is a method there to say, no, I want more than just my local server. I want every one of them from the network. SmoApplication is the actual .NET DLL that I'm going after, and data table is a repository for that information. From there, we're going to check the counts of the data table. If it's greater than 1, we're going to loop through each one of those and add them to a drop list, basically, is what is going to happen. And as long as we don't get any errors, we'll end up in C# with a little drop list of every one of the servers we have out there. Okay? Now, there's two things that, there's one thing that Windev does not have. That's this variable, the data table variable. Okay? That right there is what gave me a little bit of problems, because in the documentation for Windev, it does say that it does enumerations. Okay? The difference is what it brought back. According to them, and this is really what I consider excellent about their support, and it is free. I sent off the issue to them directly, asked them how to do it right, because we had tried to do it about 2 or 3 different ways. He researched, he says, I can't figure out a way either. Send it off to their programmers, and the programmers asked me for an example in C# to do this. I sent them this exact example, and they sent me back basically the code exactly how I needed to do it in Windev. Now, that's going up above and beyond the pail there for support, and I truly appreciate it. Now, to get over to the Windev side, let's go ahead and get rid of this. We can all see how that works. Basically, the .NET assemblies sit over here. And what I did was import into the .NET assemblies the SMO applications and system data. Okay? System data is what holds the data table variable. By using system data, I can pull that data table variable and basically use it in my Windev program just like C# does. Okay? By doing nothing more than declaring it as a dynamic. Okay? So when I get this back, basically what happens in here is I come in here and I create a server structure. I have a server structure in my array that I'm putting this in, which that server structure is nothing more than a name and the instance is what it is. And I declare that the DT is the dynamic data table equaling the call to the .NET DLL for the enum available SQL servers. Now, I'm not sending a false or true because I want everything. I don't care. But I'm doing this right there, okay? So now I go through the same, almost exactly the same code. If the rows count is greater than 0, I'm assigning the data row to be dynamic, so I have that. And then basically for each X of the data rows, I look at the server and get the item name. And as long as I see a slash, because I want a specific instance of the server, then I will add it to my array. Okay? Screen-wise, this will come up in, and let me open up that window. This will come up into this window here and show me the available servers. Let's run that. Actually, yeah, I think I can just do that, yeah. And you'll see what'll happen here. Let me bring it over as soon as she gets done loading. It opened up on the other screen for a second here, guys. Then we'll talk about the .NET DLL here in a minute too. I created a .NET DLL. I haven't gone as far as to include it into the Clarion program yet, but I want to go through that fairly quickly too. Okay, as you can see right now, we've got all of the servers around here with the instance names. Now, our instance creation is always TCS_systems. So I'm going to exclude everything else out there unless it has a TCS systems in it. That's what that loop code did, was to say, hey, if you ain't got a slash, that means you don't have an instance, and I don't want to talk to you. Okay? So this kind of just trims it down to only the ones I can get to, and now I've got a listing here out on the network of every one of the instances of SQL Server that I can get to and I can pick from. Fairly simple. A lot easier than what I thought it would be, because in essence, all I did, if we took these side by side again and take a look at the two of them, you can certainly see that the code itself is just certainly not that much different. It certainly is not that much different. From there to there is basically the same code as what I have from here to here. Just not a whole lot of difference there. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them in, ask them whatever right now, and we'll go over them. And the thing that I like about this, and this is really the true thing I like about it, is that if I do need something from .NET that Windev doesn't provide natively, I can certainly go find a C# example, even create my own if I need to, and I can definitely get this done. And it makes it a heck of a lot easier when you're dealing with objects out there that are not necessarily Windev native. Okay. There also is delegates. For those that do C#, you'll know what a delegate is. There's also items to catch, events coming from the .NET DLL or the .NET items, so that way you can actually do events and everything else from it as well. We don't do as much of that, but this is basically one thing that we had to do. We had to do this. So if we look at the entire application of the same thing that I was showing you earlier, let me bring that window up and show you in running it. We can now bring up my installation window just like the other one. I can click here, get all of the servers that are out there, pick one. It take a moment. It does take a little bit longer for it to find, so I'm going to pick one, and then I can say, well, give me the databases from it, and that pops up automatically. I've got my database, so I say, okay, now I can log on and go ahead and log on to the software from here because I've got my connection for my server and my database directly from using the .NET items that are already out there. Okay. When I was playing with the FreeImage.net, I noticed there were several icons and colors in the .NET drop-down in Windev, but never found a legend that told me what they mean. Let's take a quick look. And one thing I will tell you, and this is one thing that does bother me about this, if you have a very large schema for .NET assembly, it will slow you down. It will slow down the entire environment. It's trying to evaluate everything in that .NET assembly. So what I do is I get the right one in there, then I close the screen, bring it back in, and until I touch it, I don't have to worry about it. Just keep that in mind, okay? Just keep that in mind. Those are all classes. I'm looking for something other than a class. You're talking about some of these. That's a global property. That's a variable, is what that would be. That would be a looks like it'd be a method, but there, the variable and you're talking about the V's and the G's is what you're talking about, Pete? Is that what you're talking about, the icons here that you're seeing?
Pete, I turned your mic on if you want to talk. Anybody that wants to talk, raise your hands up and I'll give you the mic.
So it looks to me like that would be a result for a get variable. Now you can double click on it and actually see the class that is generated in order to get that information. That's one thing you can do also. Okay. But that's basically it. It's a very simple one. It's not as complicated as some of the other ones that we could get into, but this is something for like when you're playing with the servers and things like this. If they do have a way to go get them from elsewhere, it can easily be done. It can easily be done. Okay.
So what other places do you think you might need to use C# or something external?
Well, there is quite a few things when I'm dealing with MS SQL that I may use it for in just researching through what's available. We're not going to do a whole lot because bottom line is if you get into too much .NET, you have to make sure they have the right .NET version out there. You're looking at trying to install the .NET runtime stuff, and that's probably the biggest drawback. So, it's not something I'm going to jump out there and every chance I get throw in a .NET, item in order to solve the problem. I'm going to try to solve it within Windev first, because then I won't have to worry about it. And there are two other files from Windev that go out with this dealing with .NET. So if you got something that just does not work right, I wouldn't. Part of the things that I'd be looking at is anything underneath the covers that does not require a user interface. So if I need to do something with SQL or I need to do something, say, with the installation, maybe a few things like that I might. Right now, this is the only thing at the moment that I'm going to have to deal with in doing this, so I'm kind of limiting how much .NET I go after. Now, I created .NET. That's the next thing I was going to show you, is how I created a .NET DLL out of Windev with a COM wrapper around it, so that way we can use it in Clarion.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like this going back and forth stuff.
Well, the process there, and I'll go ahead and talk about this. The process we have is we have an interface with a bridge out there that is that brings up a web page that can bring down an XML that is too large for Clarion to handle, over past the 65K limit. So the big problem we have is that the minute we try to get more than that, either we got to chunk it up somehow, or ask our other guys to figure out a way to chunk it out, or we just got to do it. So the smart thing for us is to utilize the XML features and things like that from Windev, and basically call the interface just like we would using CaveSauce tool for the web. Okay, so the process here is fairly simple. We put an HTML control on the screen here, okay, which has a query. This is the actual web page. When you throw that in there, hit the submit query, you go through an entire set of deals to figure out a quote for the automobile, and then when you hit save, it sends you back, or you got to go grab the XML that it returns, and then what we do is we shove it straight to the database, let MS SQL. Somebody's got a back deal on their mic, Pete. And let MS SQL decipher what's in there, and throw it into temporary tables so we can use it. When that's all done, then our regular application will pick up that data and do things with it as it needs to. Okay. Now, the thing, there's two pieces to this. It's easy enough to create any kind of item that you want and go through the .NET and say, I want to generate a .NET application, or I want to generate a .NET assembly DLL, which is what you're looking for, okay? The difference is that you also need to have down, when you do this, an svn.exe program. What that does is put a link to the a licensed software so it could be used as a COM object. Okay, and all I did was create that, and I'll show you the actual little file that it created. Check here, I went to the wrong place, didn't I? Yeah, it's right there. And what it did was create this little tcs-tire.snk. So you have to create that SNK file. It's real easy to create. Doesn't take much at all to do that, okay? What we'll do is that once that's created, all I have to do now is, once I got my screen doing what it's supposed to do, just like I would in Windev, I can hit the F9, I can go through the process, I can test everything. All I do is go up to the workshop, go to .NET, generate a .NET assembly. When I go through that .NET assembly, I'll show you the different pieces with it as well. We're going to tell it everything. Oh, you do have to have a class. Let me show you the class, straight class. I forgot about that. In order to do the COM object, you got to have a class set up for this. And all the class is in essence a constructor, destructor, and basically my call window. That's it. That's all I'm doing is calling the window right here. That's all you have to do. And that'll expose it to Clarion to be able to call it. Now go back to this so we can see this. Generate the .NET assembly. Go through that. Step through all the little stuff here. Tell it you want to do, expose the class. And then you tell it what framework that you want to work with. I'm not doing anything more than the .NET 2.0, so I'm fine with the .NET 2.0 on that. The next step is everything that needs to be loaded. You'll see there's a few things that need to be loaded there. An error message, obviously we're getting to that. And the last step is you got compile options and advanced properties. In the advanced properties is where you have, yes, the .NET assembly must be accessible via COM. When you do that, it's going to say, I need the sync file. So I need to create a strong name .NET assembly to do that. Then I create the SNK. I had the SNK file already did. Choose the SNK file and hit OK, and then boom, you're off and running. Okay. Now, once that is done created, you have created a TCS, well, in my instance here, my name is activent.dll, and that is a .NET DLL ready to go. Okay. And I'll show you the file on it as well. So in my exe now, I have a TCS activent DLL there with everything there. Okay. And that allows me to shippable this, and this is the .NET piece that gets shipped with it too. I can ship this with the application and literally use this in my Clarion application. Now I haven't quite got so far. I'm trying to get the EasyCom thing to get kind of straight, and as soon as I get that working, I'll actually have this running in a Clarion application, is what it'll be. Any questions on that? Okay, sorry, I'm gonna tell you this. Okay, figure out how to. Okay. But never found a definite connection. The C sample, it gave me the compression I could call it, but never got it right in Windev. Pete, I tell you what, offline a little bit later today, this afternoon or this evening, let's take a look at it together. Maybe I can help you get that way, okay? And get it set up, and maybe we can get that figured out for you, Pete. Okay? Thanks, Jeff. You and I are going to talk. Any questions on this? Anything at all?
No.
Either I've blown you away, or you just say, "Oh man, that's too easy. I can handle that."
I just
I
want
know
to
I've got it.
I just want to do a Java one, man.
You don't want to do a Java one? You go for it, son.
Well, okay, look, if you do .NET, you got to have all the .NET stuff, right? If I do Java, I have to have Java runtime. So
yeah, you would have to have Java runtime. Now that's the reason why I chose the .NET 2.0, because it usually is, the runtimes are already in anything that's a Windows 7 forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you may not have 4, you may not have other ones, but at least your 2.0 should be there. If
the earlier
should
ones.
be there. Yeah. And that's right. When Terry's correct. SQL does require .NET
Also,
already.
You already have it. Okay.
Yeah, you already got at least 2.0 in there. So we won't have to worry about that right there. What we're talking about there, David, the .NET is for the SMO, or System Management Objects, for MS SQL is what it is. So I set mine up to 2.0 so as the minimum, and usually, very seldom we're going to have to, oh no, they don't have the run times and we have to download them on there. So I'm hoping that this is something that we never really have to deal with, unless somebody just says, hey, but it's all running on a Windows 98. I can't understand why it won't run. So. But we do want to minimize how much .NET we use, just from the standpoint of is that if we start using things that are not normally on the machine, like a .40 item or something like this, that means we got to do a whole lot more shipping or a whole lot more checking to see if they got the right versions and stuff. And we want to minimize that impact as much as we can.
Wow. Do you visualize people using Windev to write the .NET versus Visual Studio?
The only reason I'm doing the Windev.net is because this same screen that I'm doing in .NET will eventually be a component. Okay? So there's no sense in writing it twice.
Oh, you're using it on both sides. I got it.
Yeah, what's going to happen is because I don't have to compile this as a .NET every time. I can tell it to compile as an exe if I want to. So in writing it once here, I can make it a component, and then when we start, the conversion routine and get to that point, all we're doing is going to call this as a component, and it'll do exactly the same thing. Okay? Write it once. Why write it twice?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Because if you're bridging between Clarion and Windev, why not do it here and use it both places? Huh?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Got it.
Now, we're not going to be, I don't know how many DLLs we have, Terry, offhand, but we're not going to be pulling stuff off and moving them over a piece at a time. There's too much differences in the feature sets that's available. Okay, from the Clarion versus what Windev can do on browsers and things like that. So there'd be a little bit too much of a difference for our client base. So we would be looking at making components and areas and stuff they would do, and then when we finally get it all together, we just put it all together as one package, and they got a whole new version. But like that login I was showing you, that's a component. It's generated as a component. We call it as a component, and no matter what application exe that we're going to throw out there for different things, we can now use that as the standard login without any issues that way. Write it once.
Write it once.
That's right. Use it everywhere. Okay. Now, if there's no other questions, anybody has anything that want? Okay, we got to go down here. According to okay, let's see. I got several over here. Okay.
Should I bring the chat back up?
Yeah, go ahead. See if there's anything in there.
Put your questions or comments there, guys.
Okay. Other than that, I'll make them short, sweet, to the point. You'll be able to understand what's going on, and we're all leaving tomorrow at noon for the class for the weekend. So we're gonna be sitting there, and I'm gonna be sitting in the back room and having fun.
Back row.
Back row, yes. I'm gonna be in the back row. Yes.
There's no back rows, man. I talked to Glenn. No back rows. Everybody's in the front row.
Everybody's in the front row. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, I will move a table to the back row.
You'll be in the other room because there's no room for a back row.
I'll be back there in where the cookies and the stuff is that Glenn's wife is going to bring.
Yeah.
That's where I'll be.
Okay.
Other than that, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
7:30 exactly. Great job. If there's no more questions, brought to you by us. Okay. I'm going to shut the recording down, okay?
All right. Be good or be good at it.
Later. Thank you so much again, Andy.
You betcha.
See you tomorrow or the day after.
Day after.